Buyers don't want to talk to salespeople, especially really early before they understand the product and understand the value they might get from it. So in many ways, it's a recognition of that market fact that you want to deliver value early before forcing them into a sales conversation. So that's what product-led growth really comes down to. So today we want to talk a little bit about product-led growth. First off, let's start with some definitions. David, in your opinion, what is product-led growth or PLG?
Yeah, so when I think of PLG, it's kind of to lower value. It's a way to onboard these customers into your product for them to very quickly achieve value separately from a sales motion. So these are two distinct go-to-market plays. The most simplest definition would be like the free trial.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's right. I was at the product-led growth conference a couple of weeks ago, and it's really a recognition of like changed buyer behavior. We've all heard that buyers don't want to talk to salespeople, especially really early before they understand the product and understand the value they might get from it. So in many ways, it's a recognition of that market fact that you want to deliver value early before forcing them into a sales conversation. So that's what product-led growth really comes down to, and SaaS, companies and products are kind of tailor-made for that because you can deliver that over a web browser. It's important to understand it's not a fit for everyone, of course. It's if you have a really complex product, a sales motion, you're going to require that high touch to show value. But for a lot of organizations where there is some part of the product or some tier they can identify that quickly demonstrates value to the client, you can then put that in front of the prospect, get them to engage with it, and then identify the high value ones coming through that funnel and ultimately, get them to convert through higher touch sales and marketing motions.
Definitely. And yeah, I think it's good for us to have the proper definition before we move on with the discussion. And it sounds like what we're saying is PLG isn't for everyone. It's a separate motion. It may not work if you have a very complex product. Those are more tuned towards the high touch plays. But if you have a kind of relatively straightforward experience, users are able to self-serve and get ramped up in even just a limited environment of your product.
And, there are definitely challenges when it comes to building and rolling out a PLG motion. I'm interested in your thoughts on this, but initially one that comes to mind is just how you roll it out. I mean, it can be super risky. You're all of a sudden putting part of your product out there and expecting users to engage with it for free, as opposed to collecting lead data on the page as their first step. So obviously, our recommendation would be to experiment your way through it and test ways you can do it, and also measure the efficacy of it so you can continue to iterate and optimize that funnel. But what other challenges do you see when it comes to rolling out PLG?
I see a lot of challenges. The top of the list really is the cross-team alignment. Sales and marketing often are working towards different KPIs. We have seen when we roll out and surface a new PLG offer, it is going to impact the sales team in some capacity, whether it's the quantity of leads coming in, and we need to be considerate on how that's going to impact the individual sales reps and their numbers and how they feel about everything. So as we alluded to, you really need to ensure that your product is even relevant for PLG, in that it's not incredibly complex, doesn't require additional services to use. A user can ramp up and get to kind of the core value of the product on their own. Assuming that's defined, then you do need to have a fairly in-depth, data-backed conversation with the sales organization. We're seeing a lot of the market is at this point where every sales team is complaining about lower quality leads. They want higher quality leads. They're wasting their time with low quality leads. Assuming that your organization is having a similar problem, then it does become more of a win-win for everyone. And what we often propose is, again, this is kind of assuming like a default SaaS product where you have your lead forms, go into the marketing automation, sales touch, and that's kind of your main marketing and sales motion. Assuming that's true, what we have done quite successfully is utilize, and we talk about this often, our multi-step lead forms, our interactive lead forms, where we're asking some additional qualifying questions on the form, routing those leads to the correct outcomes. That might be a separate topic, but using that mechanism, we're able to, and some of the input from the sales team, some of that data attributes that are helping us identify these, what I'll define as like low quality leads, or maybe we define that as like PLG relevant leads, funneling those to the PLG offer. So we're not forcing anyone to any experience. As softly as possible, we're trying to reroute some of these leads that sales may not want to talk to because they are in their mind of lower quality, and then siphoning them to the PLG, and that becomes our initial rollout strategy. That's kind of the baseline rollout strategy that we often utilize with our customers.
I think a lot of it, well, like most things, comes down to fit and intent before they talk to sales. Like everybody wants higher quality leads coming through the funnel before they get salespeople, because dealing with leads is and through a sales team is relatively expensive for an organization. So you want to make sure they're the right fit for that motion and that action, and that they have intent. And so PLG, one of the advantages of it, if done correctly, is that it really lets you identify that intent, whether it's through the form that you're talking about leading to PLG or in the product itself. You can find signals from the way that they engage with you and with the product to surface if they're ready for a higher touch marketing or sales motion. So I think that's really where, if done right, PLG can be effective, is identifying those intent signals and surfacing those, and through that triggering, the right actions. This is a role where I think AI is going to be, very helpful, because there's a lot of data that you can get from both your website, from the engagement with the product, and sifting through that is a perfect role for data science and ultimately like machine learning and other types of AI models, because you can quickly get through which of those signals is just noise and not really indicative of propensity to convert, and which ones are really do show that it's a high value, high intent prospect that your sales team should be talking to.
Yeah, I want to talk about that a bit more. I mean, in the past, identifying these signals and the data analysis has taken a bit of effort. Regression analysis, finding the attributes and the patterns. So you're saying that you really view that as a place where probably today or even very soon, AI is just going to really streamline and help people get insights that may have been difficult to uncover in the past?
I think that's right. I mean, the way we typically approach this sort of thing is start with some initial exploratory data analysis, right? Use the signals that you have available to see what actually correlates to conversion, whether that's, sales qualified leads, opportunities, or actually closer one revenue, depending on your sales cycle. You can find the signals that are currently relevant, but that's just the starting point, right? Don't assume that static model is going to hold over time, because behaviors change, products change, markets change. So this is where a machine learning approach, which is sort of constantly learning, changing the weights, incorporating new signals into the process, can be really effective, because it doesn't require that manual step every time, and it doesn't assume that the conditions are static. It'll sort of evolve with you. So yeah, I do think it's a strong place for AI, machine learning, and those types of approaches to be effective.
Perfect. One other piece that I want us to talk through now, as we're discussing kind of initial rollout and strategy and how people can quickly explore this and ramp it up, is defining success. Baseline SaaS organization has their pipeline numbers, quarterly opportunities. So I'm curious, with a PLG, the attribution is still there, although perhaps it comes through in a different, I don't know, a different way. I see challenges with being able to report success or failure beyond just kind of incremental signups, top of funnel interactions and things like that. So I'm curious what that measurement strategy would look like.
I think we can safely say that very few organizations have an exclusively PLG motion. I mean, business to consumer SaaS, or maybe of which there are a handful. But B2B, you're talking about really like that balance between what stays purely product led, meaning that it's a self-service only motion versus what goes to a sales team and more of an enterprise marketing and sales motion. So, you're trying to establish the right balance, and you're probably adjusting and tweaking that as you go through this. So ultimately, it's going to come down to revenue or something that's as close to that as you can, and evaluating things like the capacity of your sales team, the number of opportunities generated versus the number of low quality conversations that they're having, to get that mix right. And so you've really got, I think, got to take a ROI based approach to it. So what is the return you're getting from taking some of those prospects and moving them to product-led growth and using actual in-product metrics to figure out who to talk to? And is that generating the quality of leads, opportunities, et cetera, that you're looking for? But ultimately, like everything else, it's got to be revenue based or close to revenue based, if you can get there, because ultimately that's what matters. I was at this conference talking about product-led growth, and someone from Gartner was up there and actually ranked their research on the most important website resources for product-led growth companies. And I know this is something that you've done a lot of experimentation around. And one of the takeaways for me was that interactive demos scored really highly in their research in terms of like the most valuable website resources for prospects for they're on product-led SaaS companies. So I'm just curious, like we've done experimentation with interactive demos. Like what's our experience been?
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised. We've definitely seen this pattern in user behavior on websites moving towards appreciating more interactive based experiences in general.
Mm-hmm.
People are over these static things, and we're not talking about full, very intrusive personalization, but the interactive aspect is definitely something that is here to stay. So, these very top of funnel PLG pieces of the PLG motion, whether it's kind of the on-demand demo, the interactive demo as well, like they fall completely in line with that. I think what's interesting and perhaps may resonate with some people out there is that the quality of this interactive demo matters significantly. We've certainly seen there's various SaaS platforms that offer the capability to build these interactive demos. Some are of different quality, some offer reporting, some do not. And we've definitely had experiences where the users, they are very enticed and they are essentially clicking through to this interactive experience. But if the interactive experience is bad and there's no measurement and it really doesn't reflect what the actual experience would be for that user, if assuming they signed up, we've seen that perform pretty poorly. I definitely I appreciate Gartner sharing that. I think if you want to go down that path, it's fine initially in a lightweight manner to just validate that your visitors are interested in these interactive demos. And you can do that through very simple A/B tests on the website. And then once you have the signal, perhaps that does show that it's worth the investment to really put the time into a very comprehensive and cohesive experience, proper tracking, etc. And I think you'll have more success that way than just kind of rolling out a lackluster top of funnel experience and not really boding well for you.
Yeah, and I think that's a really important story because there's lots of things that you can do when it comes to website resources that can move you towards PLG. The interactive demo is one, but that can be pretty expensive and complex to do. So a ungated video, for example, can still meet the same objective in a lighter weight way by showing some value, but it might be easier for you to roll out. Product briefs, ROI calculators, these sorts of things all get to that same purpose, which is like demonstrating value, and they have different cost and complexity trade-offs to think about. So, starting with the easier stuff and working your way towards the more complex interactive stuff as you validated it is probably a really good suggestion, especially as you consider, what your organization and your team can actually deliver. Because if you're pulling in a whole bunch of engineering resources and product resources to build an interactive demo, and to your point, you don't have the instrumentation set up, you're not really measuring it, it doesn't really reflect the value that your customer cares about at that time when they're engaging with it, it's just not going to work, and you're going to have wasted a bunch of cycles on it.
Certainly. And I just want to add, I'm definitely aligned with the ungated demo type approach. Where I see a lot of companies fail is they're still leaning towards these overproduced type demo videos. As you mentioned, like the time to value, quickly showing that is crucial. And some of the most impactful demo videos we've seen are literally just a screen share by a sales rep or the CEO walking through the product and showing these critical kind of value moments of the experience. Don't think you have to produce this long, it's going to take a while. Roll out the most authentic experience demo you can. It's kind of in line with where everything is going with short form content on social media, and that's how people are consuming news. We do not need a 10-second intro of your brand with music and stuff. Get to the meat and potatoes. We're seeing users are really appreciating that and more enticed by that sort of experience.
Yeah, it's really is about time to value, right? And to that point, there's often this happy path that we want all of our prospects and users to go down, whether that's on the marketing website or even in the free trial or free tier. And we kind of lay out this onboarding sequence that we expect everyone to go down. But the reality is not everyone does, and they don't get that quick time to value. And so knowing when someone has strayed off of that happy path and where it makes sense, intervening and saying, hey, can we help you out, whether that's the success team or if they're valuable enough, the sales team, that's really where there's a lot of potential value. Because when people get tripped up and you can identify that in the data and reach out to them, you can get them back on the right path and get to time to value faster. Yeah, I think one interesting approach is the pricing page. So pretty much everyone who's going to be doing some kind of PLG in SaaS usually has a pricing page, and it's a great place to segment high value, high intent visitors from your lower tier customers that are better served by self-service. And if you can do that, well, then build it out from there through things like interactive demos, better onboarding, etc.